We're extremely fortunate to have Andrea Williams to speak with us today as our keynote speaker to kick off CAOS 2020. Andrea started her tenure with College Football Playoff as the Chief Operating Officer in August of 2018. In her role, she is primarily responsible for managing the national championship game and all affiliated events. She is also the primary liaison with the 6 bowl games that participate in the CFP arrangement, and will also manage the process for selecting sites for championship games. She joined the CFP staff after serving as the Big Sky Conference Commissioner for 2 years. Her appointment as Big Sky Commissioner in 2016 made history in college athletics as she was the first African-American woman to assume this role at an NCAA Division I conference. She transitioned to the Big Sky from the Big Ten Conference, where she spent a decade as the conference associate commissioner, handling football and basketball operations. She has served on several national committees, including the NCAA Board of Governors Sexual Assault Prevention Commission, NACDA's Athletic Director of the Year Selection Committee, the John McClendon Minority Scholarship Foundation Board, the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame Board of Directors, NCAA Women's Collegiate Basketball Officiating LLC, and the Collegiate Event and Facility Managers Association. Her extensive experience in college athletics began as a student athlete, as she competed as a 2-sport athlete at Texas A&M University in volleyball and women's basketball. She completed a Bachelor of Arts degree in speech communication from Texas A&M and a Master's in Sports Administration from Ohio University. With that, I'd like to formally introduce our keynote speaker, Andrea Williams.
All right, thanks, Michaela, and thank you, Eric. It is so great to be with all of you today, although a little bit different. As people have joined the call, I have seen some awesome backgrounds, people working from outside. I think I heard a baby and perhaps a dog as well in the background. So this is certainly different in terms of ways people can meet and gather, but we will certainly take full advantage. I also just want to quickly thank the CAOS Convention Committee and the staff for your work in putting this together and for inviting me to be part of your sessions this week. Certainly, it's so important to have an organization like CAOS that can bring event, facility, game managers from across the country together to not only network, but to share best practices and to continue to support folks who work so hard, not only for their campus and community, but for athletics. And so I'm just grateful to be with all of you. I can tell you that when I was asked to speak, the world looked a lot different. And the things that we are experiencing and seeing and watching can definitely be complicated, and it can be difficult. And I think just now more than ever, and I think we've heard others say it time and time again, that it's time to be kind to one another, to be gentle with ourselves, to listen. We know that people are battling things that we could never understand or what they're going through. So it's so important for us to stay connected, check in with your colleagues, reach out to your family and friends, and just let people know during these trying times, everybody's experiencing it differently. So that's why it's so important for us to stay connected. So let's not lose sight of that. I can tell you that what's happening in the world weighs heavy on me. And I'm gonna need this group of 105 plus people to uplift me, because that's what you guys deserve today in your keynote. And just like any other great event manager that's out there, we rise to the occasion when we are challenged. So again, couldn't be happier to be with you guys this afternoon. It certainly breaks up all the other Zoom calls and meetings that we have going on. So hopefully we have fun this afternoon as well. I think they've given me 30 minutes. I think I warned them that I've never stayed within my time limit for any presentation I've done, but we're going to work hard today because we want to make sure that we leave things open for questions at the end. So Joe is driving today with our PowerPoint, and so just a quick thank you to him for guiding us through today. Hopefully I won't screw it up on his behalf. But we'll jump right into it. So for today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my path in athletics. We'll talk about leadership, inclusivity, and then a path to advance in the profession of athletics. And with everything, I would say, as you listen to different people talk, share their experiences, glean from it what's important to you. If we step away from this call in about 45 minutes and you say, hey, that really wasn't great for me, I apologize. Luckily, it was only 45 minutes of your time and not an hour. But hopefully there's something here that will resonate with you that you can take back to your community or to your office that you find valuable. So I'm in it with you today, and hopefully we'll find something meaningful. Next slide. All right, about me. Michaela was generous enough to share the attendee roster with me. So I saw several names out there that I've had the opportunity to visit with before. Some of you have heard my presentations in the past, so I apologize. Many of you have already heard some of these stories. So if you are texting or answering emails, I can't see you anyway, so I will not be offended if you tune out for this part. But I think it's always good for individuals to know about who their speaker is, where they came from, what was their path like, because there might be something that we connect on. It might generate some thoughts and some questions that you want to visit on as well. So that's what we're here to do. So I will try and be brief. But about me, I think the number one thing I will always tell people is the fact that I am an Air Force brat. My dad retired from the military when I was in college, and what that meant was we just moved around. Every 2 to 3 years, we were moving to a different city, a different base, which meant I had new teachers, new coaches, new classmates, new friends, new teammates. The list goes on and on. And so for me, that's really a claim to fame. I would not have had it any other way. I think that it has lent to the person I am today, and I loved every minute of it. I may not have a best friend that I've known for 40 years that I can go back to a hometown to, but it's awesome that I've got friends and connections across the country. And I think that's what's super cool about living a military lifestyle, or those that have families that because of whatever is driving them, it could be missionary work, it could be a professional career, that forces them to move quite often, and I loved it. Because of that, I say I claim San Antonio, Texas, because that's where I went to high school. That's where my parents retired. So it's just easier to say San Antonio versus saying I was born in Missouri, moved to Alabama, Pittsburgh, DC, San Antonio, 3 different Air Force bases in San Antonio. So there's a lot going on there. Don't know if I have any Aggies out there. I should have checked that before I jumped on, but I finished in 1997 from A&M, and moving back to join the CFP is the first time I've lived back in Texas since I graduated. While I was at A&M, as Michaela mentioned, I was fortunate to play both volleyball and basketball. It was a great experience. I played 2 years of basketball and 4 of volleyball. The question I get a lot was it difficult? Was it more challenging? I will tell you, I was better off when I didn't have idle time and idle hands. And so playing both sports in college definitely helped keep me busy, but also focused. So it was a really great experience. I always make sure that I tell people that I'm a little sister. I'm much, much younger than my older sister and brother. But what's awesome is that all of us receive athletic scholarships. And so my sister, who's the oldest, went on to have a wonderful basketball career at the Air Force Academy. My brother played football at the University of Richmond, and then I came along a little bit after that. And I think I probably had a little bit of a false security in terms of, oh, it's easy to get accepted into a college and get your education paid for and play a sport. Because I watched them do it, and they did it so effortlessly. And so I had really good role models, in addition to my parents, but also my siblings, who really did set the tone in terms of expectations, which was, you're going to go off, you're going to get an education, and as my dad said, you're going to pay for it. So we had to figure it out, and athletics was the only way that I was going to get that done. So I was very lucky. I always like to include that I'm a crazy dog lady. I know I've got dog lovers out there listening, and especially during this time, they are just, they're true soldiers on our behalf and give us so much. So you can see on the slide there, I've got the 5 dogs that used to be our pack. That particular picture was taken from my condo in Chicago, where I had all 5 dogs for summer. And they were all lap dogs. They were all lazy. So it actually made it quite fun and easy for me, but they certainly were a lot of love. You can see there in terms of my work path. After I finished the 5-year program at A&M, yes, it took me 5 years to graduate. It was good though. I had a number of internships while I was in college in the athletic department, at the local Warner Brother affiliate that we had there in Bryan College Station, and then a tremendous opportunity at CBS Sports in New York. And then after that, 3 or 4 internships wasn't enough. When I started with the Southern Conference, I was an intern. When I moved over to the Big Ten, the first time I was an intern. So for young administrators, especially for those that you guys supervise or mentor, there's nothing wrong with getting as much experience as you possibly can to become a more marketable candidate for your full-time job. You just got to be patient. Then moved on to the NCAA on the women's basketball championship side, Big Sky, then back to the Big Ten. After the NCAA, then to the Big Sky, and then college football playoff. When I was first coming out of college, I really did want to be in television, and learned quickly that probably was not the path for me. And so I always make sure that I let people know that it's okay to fail at something and to put it behind you, but to use that as a stepping stone in terms of your growth. So as Michaela said, right now I'm at the college football playoff. I've been here for almost 2 years, and what a tremendous organization. And the thing for me was when it was announced back in 2012 that there was going to be a playoff system and we were transitioning from BCS, I was just dead set on being part of the college football playoff. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know if I'd ever get the opportunity, but I realized how important that transition was, and to be part of something that was really special. And so even for the first couple of years of the championship game, I had the opportunity to volunteer. I was on their stadium ops volunteer group, also served on their advisory group committee, which just allowed individuals from institutions and conferences to provide feedback in terms of how they manage their event. There are a couple of you guys that are on here that I've had the opportunity to work with through the CFP. And so it's a special place, and I know that we're all fans of major events, and the CFP is no different. To quickly tell that story, I'm going to ask Joe to play our highlight video recap from this past year, so you guys can take in all that goes into our national championship game and our champ week.
Close your eyes for a minute, close your eyes for a second, I won't change my mind. What does getting deep now? What does getting deep now? Follow me around, yeah. Can you let me down? Please don't let me down. Yeah, 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 yeah. Baby, let me down. Can you let me down? Please don't let me down. Close your eyes for a minute, close your eyes for a second, I won't change my mind. What does getting deep now? What does getting deep now? Follow me around, yeah. Can you let me down? Please don't let me down. Yeah, 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 yeah. Baby, let me down. Can you let me down? Please don't let me down.
right, thanks, Joe. And for me, my video was a little grainy and glitchy. I hope you guys at home have a little bit better internet connection, but that gives you a sense of what happens championship week with the college football playoff. As many of you know, there are so many individual staff members, planning partners, vendors that work so hard to ensure that we put on great events and safe events. And the national championship game is no different. For those who were watching the video, if you saw the white tents that were outside of the Superdome, that was from our friends with the Secret Service. So as you know, we had the opportunity for POTUS to come to our game. And imagine, which I have to anticipate many of you have been in the same situation, that you've worked on an event and all the planning and making all these decisions for a year and a half and even longer, for a group of individuals to come in just a few days before your championship game and turn it upside down. And so as we get towards the end of the call, if you have any questions about what that experience is like in terms of having the White House come to an event, I'd love to share that experience, or we might have to do it later over margaritas, because that's about how it went. But I know that we're eating into time, so I will try and get through this and go quickly. Just wanted to share these two quick quotes with this group in terms of what leadership means to me. And you see there, it says it's based on inspiration and not domination, on cooperation and not intimidation. That means that you've got, to me at least, someone that you're working with or reporting to, or even for you who are leaders in your departments, your organizations, that it's all about being able to collaborate with one another, to build consensus, to have a team where voices are heard and ideas are listened to. The next one in terms of leadership is not about titles, positions. It's about one life influencing another. Now, that doesn't mean leaders are free from making decisions that are not popular or favorable, but it just means that the best way to get to an outcome is together with a good team that's around you. Next slide. For those of you who've heard me speak before, you've heard me share the 13 Rules on Leadership by General Colin Powell. There is this tremendous leadership summit that happens in a suburb just outside of Chicago. It's called the Global Leadership Conference, and it's at Willow Creek Community Church out in Barrington, Illinois. And it is phenomenal. I will tell you, it's about a 2.5 day event where you have speakers and leaders from all over the world that participate. There's probably about 13,000 people in the stands at the church that are listening to these individuals. And General Colin Powell came to speak. And before he did, I wasn't necessarily a fan of his, but he was so personable, so gracious, and he shared his 13 rules. So I would encourage you to take a look at them. But these are the ones that stand out to me in terms of being an event manager. How many times do people bring their problems to us and looking to individuals that are responsible for game management and facilities to help solve their problems? And sometimes they bring some doozies. And so for me, when he says it's not as bad as you think, it will look different in the morning, you know, a light bulb went off and it's like, it'll look different. Does that mean something's changed? Is there new information? Has the problem just gone away? And he goes, it's not going to look different because of the scenario, but it's going to look different because your perspective and your mindset has changed. I think that probably goes along with when you're dealing with a difficult situation, is when they say, you know, count to 10, take a step back, take a deep breath. That to me means it'll look different in the morning because we are looking at it in a different way. In events, checking the small things. We know that's where we live. Remaining calm and being kind. You're going to be dealing with patrons and boosters and vendors, individuals who might panic if things aren't going to plan. And so remaining calm is just so key. Sharing credit. I think this is one that sometimes we forget because, again, it goes back to we are responsible for putting on these incredible events. It doesn't matter if it's small or big. It could be field hockey, it could be football, but not just one person is responsible for making sure that those things are run successfully. So whenever you're in meetings, whenever you have the opportunity to visit with people, sharing credit. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when people are recognized, it's not for gloating, but it's to show value. Most people want to know that they are being a positive contributor to any organization. So sharing credit is just so important. And then finally, it can be done. We know the hours that you put in and the miracles that you guys pull off, anything can be done. It may not look the way we want it to look or what we planned it to look like, but it can be done. Next slide. Leadership styles. I like to share this one with people just to get a sense of, number one, as you look at these different descriptors, which ones describe your current supervisor? I think that's important. Taking a look at this list and saying, okay, what best describes the type of leader I am or I strive to be? And everyone is different, but I think the more you know about the leadership style of those around you, of your supervisor or yourself, the better your team will operate. For me, the ones that stand out are the servant leadership, democratic leadership, and situational. I think in general, people need to know that you care about their work, that you care about them, that you care about what they are going through. People want input. Everyone here on this call today and those that are in your respective departments, everybody has knowledge, everybody has experience, everyone has a unique take on what the work looks like. And so to provide input, it could be direct, it could be via survey, it could be one-on-one, but people have opinions and they have ideas, and we should be willing to listen to those. And then situational, and that one's probably my favorite, which means you're just flexible, you're nimble, based on the situation, based on the personality of the staff member, is being able to move among all of these leadership styles in order to address a certain situation or projects or decision making. Next slide. So this was pretty powerful. As I mentioned early on before I got into my comments this afternoon is, you know, we're seeing a lot of things happen in our community and around our country that is heartbreaking. And for many of you on this call, for those you work with, for those you go to church with, those who are in your community, people are hurting. And so to see people in a position of power that recognize the challenges of those around them, and instead of trying to combat, they want to listen, they want to commiserate. And to me, this picture says what a situational leadership is. They had a number of ways to address, in this case, protesters, and they chose in this moment that these individuals needed brothers and sisters to support them, to listen, to be an ally. And so this is pretty powerful. And with that, this is where I would share with this group, and I said it earlier in terms of checking in on people, but people who think differently than you, people who act differently than you, people who were raised differently than you. It's not necessarily race and gender alone. But checking in with people, try to understand them, amplify each other's voices. If you're in a meeting and you have a colleague that has an idea and no one responds to it, take a moment and say, hey, I think Jennifer just had an idea. Jennifer, did you want to expand on that? Amplify your colleagues' voices, because that's something that you would want to have them do for you. Don't let anyone be dismissed. And that goes for your student athletes, to your interns, to those folks who are working tirelessly overnight from housekeeping. You know, everyone matters, and everybody's voice matters, and everybody's experience matters. And so as you deal with people, number one, think about how you want to be treated. And number two, think about what do these people need in this moment from you as a leader? And leadership isn't only in your office. You don't just have to be someone's boss or supervisor to lead. You can lead from any seat, from any position, in any place, regardless of your age and title. And so don't think that you have to sit back and wait for people to engage you. Have enough confidence to step up for yourself, to share your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings on any situation within the workplace or within your community. Next slide. Here, I always like to just include some best practices that I think are key. You guys could certainly add to this list. I'm not going to read them all because we've already talked a little bit, but I think empowering staff, it's pretty awesome. When you see individuals who get the opportunity to lead in meetings, on a project, and you see that confidence boost that goes into them because they know that they have that ownership, and even more importantly, they know that they have your support. It's easy for people to tear others down, to criticize and critique people's work. It's easy to say, well, that's not how I would do it, so the way that you're doing it is wrong. No, let people thrive. Let people succeed in the way that makes sense for them, and then celebrate them. I think we need to do more of uplifting others and breathing life into others and celebrating their victories as if they were your own. Another thing there, the third bullet from the bottom, in terms of recognizing it's a privilege and responsibility to lead. Having this opportunity is not just handed to people. And a lot of times it's not something that comes naturally to people. That's why we have groups and organizations that are out there teaching us how to coach the coach or teach the teacher, or giving us tools in order to make sure that we can have a positive culture within our organization. No business, no company is free of dysfunction. That just doesn't exist. But our effort and our intention to ensure that the people that we work with and that are part of our organization have support, they have their tools to be successful and are in a place that's conducive to getting work done, that's a responsibility. And either we know it and we do it, or we have to learn in order to apply it. Next slide. You guys have probably seen, those who've heard me speak before, I have included this tweet that simply says, you're always doing one of two things as a player. And this could be as a colleague, as a coworker, as a neighbor. You're doing one of two things. You're either impacting or you're complicating. You're impacting or you're complicating. I have to imagine in this moment, we all know people who are either impacting or complicating. The bucket of people who are impacting, that means they are showing up, whether they want to or not. They've got good energy. They're supporting their castmates. They're making a positive impact on the enterprise, even if they're not always doing it the right way or getting things done in the way that people expect them to be. But if their intention is good and it's positive and they're being a good team player, then we know that they're impacting. We also know those who are complicating. Those individuals who don't necessarily want to be involved in projects or indicate how things can't be completed because of whatever reasons and rationale. Those who want to complain about their supervisor or their projects or decisions that are being made. No place is perfect. No leaders are perfect. No organization is perfect. But if you give individuals the benefit of the doubt, that is how you help less complicate your organization. And I would say, to be fair, if you have a conflict with someone, if you have issues with decisions that are being made, it doesn't mean that we have to go in and stomp our fists against the desk and say we disagree, but lean in. Lean in to have difficult conversations with colleagues and supervisors to say, you know what, I'm confused, help me understand, or I believe this is a better decision, can you explain to me why? And then be able to walk away from it, but give people the benefit of the doubt to be able to address the concerns or hurt or issues that you have. And so instead of complicating, be an impact. And perhaps through those conversations, you might make change. Next slide. All right, and I'm going to keep going on with leadership a little bit in terms of the inclusivity piece. And I know we are at 12:37, so Michaela or Eric, you're just going to have to give me the high sign. But here, I think that it's very difficult to address probably today more than ever. But when you talk about inclusivity and people who feel like they're contributors, to feel like they're valued, means that you can't have privilege, which it just states a simple right and advantage based on nothing else but who you are as a person, not your character. It means that you have opportunity and access that others don't for no other reason than what you look like. And so for us, inclusion extends, just like leadership, past race and gender and financial status. And so for us, and you can change the slide, Joe, for us, it's going to be so important to ensure that we are engaging with our team, engaging with our colleagues. And this means for everyone. There was a gentleman at the NCAA when I was working there who we'd have an all-staff meeting between men's and women's basketball staffs. And at the very end, he would always say, all right, anybody else have any thoughts? And anybody who didn't speak up during the meeting, he would say, okay, Sarah, did you have any thoughts on this? Or Andrea, what do you think about this? And not that people wanted to be called out. Sometimes if you don't have anything to offer, you don't. But you didn't walk away from that meeting thinking that you didn't have a voice and you were given the platform in order to do that. And so that is our responsibility, whether you are a supervisor, a teammate, a colleague, an intern, it is our responsibility to make sure that we have the right people at the table, that it's a diverse group of people, and that everybody has the opportunity to participate. Bias, it's hard. Everyone is guilty of bias, myself included. I have biases. And so how do we address them? How do we change our behavior? How do we lean in to making sure that we aren't using predisposed ideas of people or things or actions or decisions based solely on just our experience? And so that's where we have to self-check, right? Determine, am I responding to something because of what I know or what I feel or what have I experienced? And just like others owe it to us, we owe it to them to make sure that we don't bring those biases into the conference room and to making decisions and to be open-minded. But we're not going to get away from bias. But if we recognize where our downfalls are, that's how we can better address them. The fourth bullet you see there, which says, in 7 seconds, strangers or people that you meet for the first time will have made up 11 impressions of you. In 7 seconds. I stole that from a presentation at NACDA a few years ago, and I was absolutely blown away. And so, you know, as an example, as I'm coming to speak to you, the impressions that you're getting, okay, did we start the call on time? Is she wearing a business suit? Is she not? Does her bio match up with what her experiences are? What does her PowerPoint look like? Is that her real background? It is not. You're gonna make impressions immediately when you meet people. That could be a fan, it could be a coach, it could be a new athletic director. And so if we self-check, because again, it goes back to, we don't know what people are going through. We don't know what battles people are fighting. And so when you come in contact with someone, they could be going through a divorce. They could have just gotten really bad news. They could be dealing with a sick puppy at home. We don't know what they're going through. So that first impression, again, it goes back to giving people the benefit of the doubt. In terms of our interactions with everybody, and we owe it to them and to ourselves to be fair, to be open-minded. Next slide. Leading by example, again, self-examination, that's that self-check. Interact with others, people that you don't necessarily want to interact with, and that goes beyond, again, gender, race. It could be go visit with the marketing people, go chat with the ticket folks. Get on campus with the university people. Interact with people who don't look like you, who don't act like you, who don't think like you. That only is going to make you stronger and better, and only make your organization that much better as well. And be inclusive. And we talked earlier about amplifying the voices of those around you. And that's what being a champion is. And being courageous. I think right now we're seeing a time where people are uncomfortable, or people want to support others but don't know what it looks like. An example I heard was, I had someone who had lost a parent. And in those moments, it's awkward. You don't know what to say. You hurt for them, you feel for them. But if talking about your loss, you fear you might cause more pain. But when talking to that person, like anytime that anybody would just reach out meant the world to me. And so keep that in mind in terms of, if you are uncomfortable having a difficult conversation, they're probably going to appreciate it. It doesn't mean that resolutions might happen, but they're going to be grateful for it. So lean into those difficult conversations, those difficult situations, knowing at the end of the day, if you at least addressed it, you are part of the solution. Next slide. All right, who doesn't love pop? San Antonio Spurs. So as we transition to the last thing that we have a little bit of time on, I know we're at 12:44, folks, is advancing in athletics. And a lot of this is geared towards our young aspiring administrators, but for us oldies and goldies like myself, you can always work to get better, to improve, to develop. You never want to stay still. And so here are about 8 of the concepts that I share when I provide informational interviews, or I have the opportunity to talk with young people. And I'm not going to go into depth with all of these because I want to make sure that we leave time for questions. But informational interviews. If there are jobs out there or people out there that you aspire to be, if you want to be the athletic director at Penn State, call up the athletic director at Penn State and say, hey, tell me about your path. Tell me about, your mentors. What advice do you have for me? Never, ever hesitate to reach out to people in the industry to talk to them about their experience, because that's our role and responsibility. Others did that for us, so we should be able to reach back and help others. Volunteering, I think that's so important too, in terms of not only professionally, like our folks who are serving with CAOS and putting the convention together, join and engage in professional organizations, but also be an active participant. And so whether that's volunteering in the community and giving back, or volunteering in the areas of what you want to do professionally, I think that's important as well. But to serve others, serve your industry, give back. Moving out of your comfort zone. A lot of us will say, you know what? I mean, it's no frills sometimes in event management and facility management. It's a lot of hours, it's nights, it's weekends, it's holidays, but find other ways to move out of your comfort zone. And that's talking about engaging with your colleagues and doing something a little bit different. That just, number one, it helps you in terms of your growth, but also potentially can help increase your network based on what you're doing. Dress code matters. I will always say it. If you're going for an interview, please wear a suit. It's us old people who are hiring, so make sure dress code matters. Professional maturity. This was an important one. For young people, and I was guilty of this, we're always looking for that next opportunity, that next promotion, that next title change, the more money. And this is where we have to be smart and not rush our careers. It's so important to make sure that we excel where we are. If you do a great job, if you're a hard worker, if you're a good teammate, if you have a positive outlook, if you do those things, those promotions, those accolades, those opportunities will come to you naturally. It doesn't mean don't strive for them, but it just means be your best in this moment, because number one, that's what your team needs. But number two, you will see the benefit on the other side. Next slide. All right, very quickly, I'm going to read the quote. Be around the light bringers, the magic makers, the world shifters, the game shakers. They challenge you, break you open, uplift and expand you. They don't let you play small with your life. These heartbeats are your people. These people are your tribe. I wish I had a tribe earlier, but now I know how important it is. But the biggest takeaway for me here, they don't let you play small with your life. People who care about you, who care about your experience, they care about your opportunity in professionally. They will not let you live small. They're going to challenge you. They're going to want you to be your best. They're never going to want to let you sit back and take a bite in a back seat with your career. These are the people you want to surround yourself with, not the ones that allow you to flounder. You want to be around those who uplift you and hold you accountable and responsible. Next slide. Simply put, all of this today, and I know I went through it very quickly, and I'm sorry I'm running out of time, but leadership, inclusivity, and advancement, all of that is within our control. All of that is our responsibility. And we have to be accountable to ourselves and our organization and our community to make sure that we are doing our part. Next slide. I know we're going to get into Q&A, but I want to make sure that I include my email address. Anytime that I have the opportunity to speak to folks, I always make sure that you know that I am available. If you want to talk about athletics, if you want to talk about military, whatever it is, I'm available to you. If you want to schedule an informational interview, learn more about the college football playoff, please reach out to me. I would love to visit with you, and I will always make myself available. So please take down that very, very, very long email address and don't hesitate to reach out. So Michaela, I think I'm turning it over to you for a Q&A session for the next couple of minutes. There was a speaker award manual. The Michigan athletic director at NACDA last year says, you guys can ask me anything. Doesn't mean I'm going to answer, but we'll open it up and happy to participate for as long as we can.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for your presentation, and we really appreciate your time to meet and speak with us today. So as you mentioned, we're going to move on to our Q&A section of the presentation. The first question that we had is, what is your advice for those who are not in leadership positions but are trying to quote unquote lead up?
Absolutely. It's possible to lead, and I know I said it earlier, in terms of any position, whether you're entry level, mid-level, senior level, it doesn't matter. And to me, it's just starting the conversation, and it can be uncomfortable. But anybody who wants the best of their team, of their organization, wants to hear from everyone to make sure that they are still advancing the enterprise. And so number one is to talk to someone that you have a relationship with the office, garner support. But if it's your supervisor, if it's someone other than your supervisor, schedule a time to talk. Let them know what you want to talk about, and then go in sincerely, authentically. I think what you saw when I opened up the call was showing vulnerability. It's okay to be vulnerable. It doesn't make you weak. It just makes you human. And so, you know, if you have an idea, if you have a concern, as long as you raise it respectfully, that's all we're looking for, is to have a fair dialogue. And so any leader worth their salt will want to hear from others on their team in terms of how to make things better, if that's your goal.
Awesome. Next question is, how could someone in the operations area get an opportunity to work game management for a big event such as the college football playoffs or events of that type? What's your advice to someone that would like to take that step?
Absolutely. Call. Use your resources. If you're interested, you know, reach out to the organization directly. What really helps is if you have a contact, if you know somebody who knows someone who can simply share your name or your resume, that helps. I get those all the time from, I may not know the person who's interested, but I know the person who is vouching for them, and that means something. So if you know someone, have them speak on your behalf and put your name in. And when you're told no, or we don't have an opportunity, ask again. Don't just take no at face value and walk away, but there'll be other opportunities that will come up and a yes will happen. And I would say ask for a lot of events. So it could be college football playoff, could be US Open, could be the Masters, could be NBA All-Star Weekend. Be a part of anything and everything that you can, and don't just continue to take no for an answer, because there will be people who eventually will say yes.
Awesome. Next question is, how do you approach your manager, boss, leader when they may lead in a way that you do not respond well to? And what does that conversation look like?
I think, for one, again, it goes back to giving people the benefit of the doubt. Take a step back. The way I approached this in my 20s versus my 30s and now my 40s is vastly different. Number one, I don't take people or myself too seriously. Again, we don't know what experiences, context, biases that people are bringing into situations. And so, again, it's about leaning in to difficult conversations. If you have a problem, don't sit on it. Don't complain about it. Go have a conversation. And then you hope that it gets addressed. And again, if it doesn't, you at least know that you did your part in terms of alerting somebody that there is an issue or there is a problem. But it all comes down to communication. Difficult conversations typically will resolve issues. It may not mean the problem goes away, but perhaps the way you address it and the people that you work with changes. And I think that's important. So it's not easy. Nobody likes conflict. But if you walk into a situation humbly and vulnerably and respectfully, people will listen, and you know that you've done your part.
Awesome. The next question is, what's your opinion on the old saying of you have to move over to move up regarding changing jobs as a necessity in order to advance in this industry?
Thank you for asking. I always say you got to be prepared to move out to move up. So thank you, whoever asked that question. I think what we've learned in college athletics is it's not a profession where we get to spend with an organization or a company for 20 or 30 years. And so, again, it goes back to being nimble and being flexible in terms of where you want to work, with who you want to work, and being open-minded. And as long as you're taking steps with your career that continue down the path in which you aspire to be, that's what's most important. Now, keep in mind, as we get older, our priorities shift. When we're young, coming out of college, perhaps we don't have a family or an ailing parent or children. And so I've heard a lot of people say, make moves or have your failures early in your career so that you've got time to make up for it. And so, to me, you have to go where the opportunities are. And sometimes they're in South Dakota, and there's nothing wrong with that. You got to go where you feel most comfortable in. And so just being open-minded to know that sometimes you have to move out of an organization to be able to move up. And again, the other thing I would like to mention is the fact that sometimes it has nothing to do with you. You could be qualified, you could be ready, you could have all the great experience, you could be a hard worker, but sometimes just the position isn't there, or perhaps it doesn't fit into the organizational chart. It has nothing to do with you and what you offer, but it has everything to do with the organization. So sometimes you have to make changes and movement based on that.
Awesome. And last question that you kind of mentioned earlier, what were the changes to operations for the championship game when POTUS decided to come, and what did the time frame look like to implement those changes when that decision was decided?
Can CAOS schedule another call so I can just do like a POTUS download, because it's pretty fascinating. It's interesting, number one, because you've got the White House that starts making calls to different organizations. They were reaching out to the NCAA about our game because they didn't realize the CFP is different from college athletics at the national level. You had individuals who were reaching out to people in the community. Some of them were reaching out to the police department. Others were reaching out to the FBI. And so it wasn't until there was an actual meeting that was happening with the stadium staff that they asked a question. And I was like, well, what are you doing? Like, oh, we're meeting the Secret Service. And I was like, where? So I invited myself into those meetings. I brought along our stadium ops person, and at that point in time, locked hips with them. And what was challenging was they had so many different people that were coming in. So whether it was Secret Service, whether it was White House, whether it was press, it was always a different person every day. So you almost had to start over. I think the most challenging part was in the city that we were in the stadium that we were playing in, It's the oldest professional football stadium out there, and so it has its challenges in the middle of a city. We had weather issues, and so one of the biggest challenges we had was figuring out our entry process, because everybody comes in off of coming down Poydras, leaving a good time on Bourbon Street, and they come into the same gate, and we will get smashed. And so we spent just the year figuring out what were going to be the entry points for the stadium. And when Secret Service came in, they changed all of it. And we had to negotiate. We had to be tough with them at times. And it's okay. You can say no to the White House. You can negotiate with the Secret Service based on your knowledge and understanding of an event, and helping, again, what do we say? Building consensus, right? Collaborating with one another, not trying to lead with an iron fist, and just express to them, if you do this, these are the challenges that we are going to face. And this is the backlash that we are going to see. This is the reason why we made these decisions. Can we come together on this? And so there were tons of challenges in terms of the changes, but I think based on how well prepared we were going into Champ Week, because they did contact us just days before, we were able to pivot. And at the end of the day, they don't care about anything else except for protecting the president. And so we had to make sure that we protected the integrity of our game, the experience of our student athletes, the ability for our fans to have an enjoyable experience. And that is what we did for a full week. And it's one of the things I'm probably professionally most proud of, but it was also one of the most challenging things that I've gone through. But happy to talk about it offline with anybody. And if you ever have POTUS coming to your stadium or event, happy to talk about that too, in terms of what to expect. I would say trust no one.
Awesome. That concludes today's presentation. We want to give Andrea a big thank you for giving us some of her time to be able to share her thoughts and join us. So thank you so much.